Hello and welcome to the first episode of a new show, a new podcast, a new sports ramble talk. It's Insomniac Sports. I'm joined with me, as now going to be always, Coach Craven.
Retired coach, but sure. I've been called that before.
He gives our show credibility, viability, the brains.
It's way too much pressure.
I'm just trying to set the bar really, really high for you. That way you'll never reach it.
Thank you. It's like my ex-wife. Hey-oh!
Already getting into the relationships. So let's start in 1983.
She doesn't listen to this crap.
Imagine she did.
Right.
Imagine she came across this. That would be incredibly funny and scary, actually, in a little bit of a way. But welcome to Insomniac Sports. We're up way too late because neither of us like to live in the daytime. And
we've already gone off the rails.
We are less than 2 minutes into the first episode, and we are fully off the rails. PFF released their top 10 starting quarterbacks to start the season yesterday. And we saw that, and we felt obligated to give our incredibly valid and astute opinions on this. Now, Craven doesn't know what this list is. I have this list, and we'll see where we go. I'm going to start with number one because number one makes the most sense. And as we go down this list, there are some interesting ones on this. So number one, you got Patrick Mahomes. Huge surprise.
Yeah, kind of obvious, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, he's the guy. Number two, you got Josh Allen. Number three, and I've seen people debate this one, you have Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I was wondering if he wasn't on there, and I was going to say, wait a minute, really?
I've seen people say he should have been number two.
I think there's an argument for that, yeah.
Especially with how he played in the playoffs.
And Allen, I think there's a question as to whether or not Allen actually is that good without Brian Daboll.
There was a question. I mean, Brian Daboll. Last season was his first season without Brian Daboll. I mean, he had a solid season. One thing I think to throw in there with Josh Allen is he was fighting through an injury last season too. The last 2 seasons he's been fighting through an injury.
That's true.
Which you want to give him credit for that, but also is a little bit concerning that you're 26 and you've already had 2 seasons where you've had to fight through injury that you're blaming performance on.
Right.
It's not a great sign. Moving on to number 4. This is the one when I saw this yesterday, I raised my eyebrows a little bit at this one. Number 4, we got Justin Herbert.
What? Wow.
I love Justin Herbert personally. He's a fun quarterback to me. I like his arm.
Yeah.
But number 4?
Over Jalen Hurts, for example?
Yep, Jalen Hurts, not in the top 5 of this list, which that's debatable.
Yeah.
At number 5 is the man in green, Aaron Rodgers. At number 6, we have Lamar Jackson. Number 7, Jalen Hurts. Number 8, Trevor Lawrence. Number 9, this is another surprising one to me, Kirk Cousins. And then number 10, Dak Prescott.
Okay. I'm sorry, people. No. How's Justin Herbert not on that list?
Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's on the list. He's at 4.
I thought My bad. I thought you were talking about the Chicago guy.
Oh, Justin
Yeah,
Fields.
My brain. I've had concussions. What can I say? All right, so I have to back up a little bit because I mean, I still Justin Herbert at 4. That might be high. I like the guy, obviously. That might be a little high. Oh, okay. See, this is what happens when you get old and you hit your head too many times. I completely flummoxed it. All right, go through it again.
Let's go through it again.
Mahomes?
I'll overview Patrick Mahomes, number 1, Allen 2, Burrow 3, Herbert 4, Rodgers 5, Jackson 6, Hurts 7, Lawrence 8, Cousins 9, and Dak 10. I'll send you the list too, so you can see it for yourself.
Yeah.
As well. One thing that I thought was interesting on this list, obviously Justin Herbert at 4, interesting. Jalen Hurts all the way at 7. It feels borderline disrespectful because Jalen Hurts had an absolutely incredible season last year. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
and in the Super Bowl, I mean, he played well in the playoffs, and people keep discounting that team because of who they played and all season, but you can't discount the fact that Jalen Hurts was very, very good, and for that team that season, whether that was scheme, whether that was anything, it doesn't make sense to me to have him that low.
No, and the problem always comes in. So I'm sitting there looking at this thing. The problem comes in then is with anything like this. So who do we replace him with, right? Um, well, okay, it's not his fault, but I'd have Hurts at only one spot, but I'd have Hurts above Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Availability, baby. That's the number one ability. Um,
Lamar Jackson also he hasn't finished a season. He's never played a full 16 games. Now we're in a 17 game schedule, and it's been 2 years since he won 10 games.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Rodgers, I was about to say that Rodgers is getting the benefit of the doubt for Pat. He had a good season last year. So, yeah, I don't know. See, as I sit here and think about this out loud, it's like it does seem wrong to have Hurts at 7, but I mean, other than Jackson, and I'm sure some people would disagree, but other than Jackson, who do we push out of there? Maybe I'm sure maybe some people would say Herbert because he hasn't won anything yet. But hasn't won. Hasn't gone into deep in the playoffs, things like that, right? But I don't think anybody doubts his talent.
It's interesting. Another name that's not on this list, Jared Goff, who had a very good season last year. 4,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks. It's an argument. There's an argument to be made for him being there at the bottom at 10. I'm not quite sure if he fully makes it onto that list, but there's at least an argument that if he's not 10, he's 11 for this list.
Yeah, I would think so. I would entertain that argument.
Interesting.
And
go ahead.
To my point that Rodgers, I started to say that Rodgers was getting the benefit of the doubt for his past work. Goff might be getting a little bit of a dinged because he, after his Super Bowl season with the Rams, he kind of struggled until last season. So, maybe that's part of that. I'm trying to think. And I certainly wouldn't put... You can't after last season you can't put the Denver guy on there.
Russell Wilson.
You can't put Russell Wilson. Yeah, you can't. I I wouldn't put. I mean, he had a nice season, but it wasn't necessarily a great quarterback season. They used him. They used him almost like a wildcat. I was going to say for the Giants.
Daniel Jones.
I can't think of anybody's name tonight. You're not going to put him on that list. Tua was hurt quite a bit of the season.
The question is here, though, too, is what are you rating them on? Is this a list of the top 10 quarterbacks, what we know of them now, or are you projecting what you think the top 10 quarterbacks will be for the season? Because if you're basing this off of how players have been, right? Lamar Jackson statistically has not been very good the last 2 seasons. We are all still riding the high from that 2019 season when he was absolutely magical. But he hasn't been that since. Aaron Rodgers, his first 10 interception season since 2010 was last season.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Not good for Aaron Rodgers. And when you look through this list, Kirk Cousins, I mean, don't know if you put Kirk Cousins at 9 over Dak Prescott. I put Jared Goff over Kirk Cousins for me.
I think I would too. Kirk's been getting a lot of. There are times I feel like about Kirk Cousins, like I did listening to all my friends that were Cowboys fans complain about Tony Romo.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, okay, people, you're being ridiculous. You're not going to get something better than Tony Romo right now. Actually doing pretty well, and by the same token, that's how I feel sometimes with some of these folks about Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's a serviceable quarterback. Boy, that's such a veiled insult, isn't it?
It is a little bit of a veiled insult.
Yeah, but I wouldn't put him. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't put him at 9. I'd put Goff on there. That's a preference thing, obviously. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, when you look at these two quarterbacks side by side statistically, you mentioned the Tony Romo, Kirk Cousins comparison. They're pretty comparable. You look at the stats.
Oh, yeah.
Kirk Cousins, a career 66% passer. Tony Romo, a career 65% passer. Kirk Cousins in 137 starts has 37,000 yards. Tony Romo in 127 starts, or a little bit less, has 34,000 yards.
Okay.
If you look at their TD and INT numbers, they're both very similar. Very, very similar TD and INT percentage. Kirk Cousins is a little lower on both. And in QB rating is about the same for both of them. And yeah, I think that's a good comparison. You look at them both, and they kind of give you that same vibe. They also had the exact same amount of Pro Bowls. Both of them went to 4 Pro Bowls as of now. Kirk has been to 4. Tony went to 4. So I think you kind of accidentally nailed it with that comparison. Yeah. And those are the guys that I feel like I enjoyed watching Tony Romo play, but I think those are the guys that hamstring your franchise more than anything. The guys who are too good to get rid of,
yes,
kill you. Think of the guys who are like that right now. Dak Prescott is another guy. He's a great locker room dude, but he, in a way, has hamstring the Cowboys. They're not going to be bad enough to go get a good quarterback, so they just keep running it back with Dak Prescott. But in theory, you can win, but he's not going to be the reason you win. Same thing with Tony Romo, same thing with Kirk Cousins. You can win with those kind of guys. Obviously, Jared Goff is in that same category, and he went to a Super Bowl. But those aren't going to be the guys who are the reason you win. And those hamstring your franchise in that good category.
Yeah. Yeah. That is an interesting point, isn't it? Because you don't want those guys, you wouldn't be wanting them to be worse. But if they were, then you could just say, all right, we got to make a move, and you do it. Now there's that fear, and there's also not the other thing that's happening to you when you're in that position is if you don't have a clear cut person to replace them, then it's a dice roll, you know,
Yep.
and so that's another problem. And you end up I was thinking about this a little bit. Thinking about I watched recently the comeback. Excuse me. The comeback game with the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Oilers
Mm-hmm.
in like 90,
With Frank Reich
91. Yeah.
and Warren Moon on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're not particularly aware, you might not know how good that Buffalo Bills team was. For 4 years there, well, more than 4 years, honestly, but that 4 year stretch when they went to the Super Bowl every year, they were incredible. And sometimes teams will have, and the Cowboys with Tony Romo were a tough team. They had some very good teams. Kirk Cousins has been on some good teams, and I yes, the goal is to win a championship, but sports is so weird, so not weird, that's not the right word, so unfair that if you don't win a championship, you get kind of dismissed. And so there's some great players out there that they just kind of, you see a list like this and you're like, oh no, don't put that guy on there, and it's like, well, actually that's a pretty good player. But I didn't realize I didn't realize that Kirk Cousins had been to 4 Pro Bowls. I didn't realize he had all those yards.
Yeah,
No.
he's been two straight, 3 over the last 4 seasons. I mean, and the Pro Bowl's interesting because the Pro Bowl's a little bit of a popularity contest, and every year you see the list of guys that you miss, that missed out, and you go, how on earth did those guys not make it in? But yeah, you do. It's interesting, the conversation about the very great players are remembered for the most part. I mean, there's still some players that we forget about how great they were, but those very good players are guys that get forgotten about pretty easily as you go through history. I'm trying to think back to guys who I remember watching who've kind of fallen off the radar. I think of a guy like Larry Johnson. He was really good for a short time.
Yeah.
But he's not great. And so, he's not going to be remembered by. I mean, he had 2 back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons in 05 and 06. And that was it for his career. After that, he never had another 1,000-yard year. And it shows how fickle and fleeting fame in the NFL is. I mean, in 05 he had 1,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 yards per carry. The next season he had 1,700 yards, 17 touchdowns, 4.5 yards per carry, averaged 111 yards per game. And the next season, he had 550 yards.
Yeah. During that stretch, I remember every time he got the ball, you kind of went,
Yeah, he was.
You were expecting, and it wasn't flash because he was kind of a power speed guy kind of thing, but so it wasn't like Chris Johnson, for example. Every time he got the ball, you're expecting something really wild to happen, but it was still like. For a while there, that guy was, if you were rooting against that team, that guy was scary. He got the ball.
Yeah. I mean, I think another guy a lot of people forget about, Jamal Charles, the same Chiefs, just a couple years later. I mean, they drafted him when Johnson was still on the team. 09, I mean, he had in his career at 5,000-yard seasons. But the thing that with Jamal Charles, that was just absurd. You take his 2010 season, 1,400 yards, 5 touchdowns. Not absurd, but really good. He averaged 6.5 yards per carry.
Was he? He wasn't splitting carries then, was he? Isn't he the one?
2010, yeah, he was splitting carries. It shows here, at least on here.
Priest Holmes? No.
Yeah, no. Priest Holmes was years before.
Okay.
Hold on, let me look. Who was he splitting carries with in 2010? He was splitting carries with running back Thomas Jones.
Oh yeah.
And this is the crazy thing about players. And going back, who was the coach? I need to call out the coach for this team. The coach for this team, 2010, was head coach Todd Haley, offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss.
Yeah.
He's an idiot. Charlie, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but you're an idiot. Let me read you Thomas Jones' stat line. 896 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3.7 per carry.
Yeah.
Jamal Charles' stat line. 1,400 yards, 5 touchdowns, 6.5 yards per carry. Charles had less carries than Thomas Jones.
Thomas Jones was an interesting one because I always felt like people used him like a pound it between the tackles guy, and he was, and he was. I mean, he had a couple of good seasons. He had, he was a good player, but I don't know. I saw him. I'm trying to think of who else he played with. Oh no, when he was with the Bears, they had, I think it was Cedric Tillman, and he was the between the tackles guy. Yeah, I always felt like Thomas Jones was getting misused in the first place.
Yeah.
But
for bonus points, can you guess who the quarterback was for that 2010 Chiefs team?
Was that Steve Bono? Or is it Steve Bono too far back?
Steve Bono was a little bit before.
Trent Green?
Trent Green was a couple seasons before as well. I'll give you a hint.
Yeah, I'm going to feel stupid.
He is one of the greatest flash in the pan quarterbacks. He had about 2 good seasons in his entire career. He got
Castle.
Yep, Matt Castle.
Yeah.
Matt Castle. That season he went 10-5. Had a really good. This was one of his good seasons. The team actually made the playoffs. They played the Baltimore Ravens and they got curb stomped 30-7. And the offense put up 50 yards of passing.
Wow, that would have been. Can you imagine suffering through that game if you're a Chiefs fan? 50 yards.
Speaking of suffering, let's talk about the San Diego Chargers playing the Kansas City Chiefs. They beat them 31-0. And the quarterback for this game was Brody Croyle, who had 40 yards of passing.
Yeah.
That is one of the great sucky performances of all time.
And see, okay, again, this is why you've heard me say this. I love sports. I hate fans. If you were talking to somebody or if you saw like a message board and Brody Croyle came up, people would be talking about how much he sucked. Dude, I'd take Brody Croyle on every high school and college team I ever was involved with. I could play, right? But
yeah.
that's telling you the difference. That's just one of the things that illustrates the difference. It's not addition. It's not even multiplication. It's exponents. That's how much better these guys are.
Yeah,
you can have these just really great players.
And that's a great point. I mean, there's always someone's uncle sitting on the couch going, I could sling the rock pretty good back when I was in high school, and I think I can make that throw better. I mean, come on, man. My grandma can make that throw. the guy who puts that to bed is Kendall Hinton, Broncos receiver. He was a star in high school. He had a D1 quarterback scholarship. He played D1 quarterback. He started D1 quarterback. He came to Denver as a receiver. He gets put in at quarterback, and he cannot complete a pass beyond the line of scrimmage. Brody Croyle, another example, 0-10 as a quarterback in the NFL, 56% passer.
Yeah.
But Croyle would, like you said, he'd crush on any high school team.
Yeah.
And that's just it's the talent gap of professional sports. It's a different level.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think of probably when I think of probably the best quarterback that I had. And he was good, and he could we'll just say he was a contender. Now he was more of a baseball player, and he actually got a scholarship to pitch, and he went with that. But he didn't have a lot of recruiters coming around to try to get him to play quarterback, and that guy could throw. I mean, we had a kid transfer from out of state, moved in from out of state, came to our school, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm a quarterback." And he took one look. This kid's name was DeQuan. Everybody just called him DQ. And he took one look at DQ throwing, and he was like, "I could play defensive back." I mean, and DQ didn't have colleges knocking down his door to play quarterback.
Yeah.
So, you think about that, and you think about, hey, part of it was probably size. DQ was only about 5'11", but I mean, come on.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I football is it's a different animal playing at each level.
Yeah.
You can't. The worst guy out there is still talented. It's just it's a credit to how good everyone else is around him, not necessarily how bad that one dude is.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking that too. That's the other thing that's unfair, especially about a sport like football. And I think here's another one that a lot of people will be like, "Oh, bum, Joey Harrington."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading a breakdown, probably in Sports Illustrated when it was still an actual sports magazine, still worthy. And they were talking about they had like the top like 10 quarterbacks in the league by QBR, all the stats you use, right? All of them had a dedicated quarterback coach, not just an offensive coordinator. They had a quarterbacks coach. Joey Harrington didn't have one. Joey Harrington was like it was like a top 10 list, I think. It might have been 12. Joey Harrington was the first one outside that list, a quarterback coach. And I think a lot of people, they think of Joey Harrington and they just think massive fail. Understandable. But and he did have they drafted a couple of guys that were going to be, weapons for him. Were going to be, these. I'm trying to think. Charles Rogers.
Charles Rogers, yeah, 6th overall, I think.
Yeah, and I understand why. Because in college he was fantastic.
2nd overall, first round, 2nd overall, 2003 draft.
Yeah. They were like, yeah, we got Joey Harrington, a weapon, and proved to not be so great. And so anyway, the point being, and you've heard me say this before in our conversations, football again is unfair. I don't know that. I'm not saying that if Joey Harrington had a quarterback coach and had a couple of serviceable wide receivers, that he would have been an all-star. I don't know, but he didn't have any of those things, and he's judged rather harshly in some circles. And that's one of the cruel ironies of football, that uh, you're at the mercy of all kinds of things.
Speaking of cruel and judging harshly, I'm going to pivot and transition. See how smooth that was.
Yes.
To the NFL announcing the new rule that all kickoffs can be fair caught inside the 25 and the ball will be brought to the 25-yard line. Not a fan.
I hate it.
I get
Absolutely hate it.
what they're doing. I think there's a million ways you could do that better. I mean, you look at what the XFL's done. They take it to an extreme, and I don't know if the NFL should take it to that extreme, but those returns are still interesting. You've kept the returns integrity without taking away, while taking away some of the danger. But like we've talked about before, danger is inherent in football. You cannot get away from it. You have people, freak athletes running at each other with the intent to knock each other to the ground.
Yeah, that's how they succeed. Yeah. Well, and I don't like it either. The first thing you're going to see is, I mean, you're not going to have the punt or that checks up at 5 and rolls dead because now when we're teaching kids about returning punts, for example, like put your heels on the 10-yard line. If it's over your head, don't catch it. Let it go. And we're not going to be mad at you if it ends up not going into the end zone. The odds are that it will. So,
Now, I don't know if
that.
this is actually applying to punts as well. From my understanding, it looked like
not,
it was just the kickoff, but I could be wrong. As far as I know,
you might not know. You might not be because they have separated the kickoffs are the thing that they've been trying more than punts because kickoffs you've got everybody spread out more. Punts obviously everybody's up on the line and the momentum is not as but still it's going to change it a little. It'll change it a little bit, I guess. I mean, if I'm on the 5-yard line and I don't think I'm going to actually get a better return, I'm going to fair catch that sucker and take it on the 25.
Andy Reid talked about it a little bit at the press conference, and what he said was, my thing is, where does it stop? You don't want to take too many pieces away, and you'll be playing flag football. And I think that's where the concern from a lot of people is that not so much about this rule in particular, but the precedent that this rule sets for where they're going with it. I've seen people, I know Tom Grassi tweeted out there that he said you look for the kickoff to disappear in the next couple years.
They proposed that before. They wanted to completely do away with it. So yeah. But that's exactly right. What Andy Reid says is a good point. Okay, so let's say that happens. They do this. You still have some injuries or whatnot. I mean, I know some players are going to be like, "No, I'm going to return it." They don't want to do it, right? And if there's not an appreciable decrease in injuries on kickoffs, then the league's next move will be to do away with kickoffs. If there is an appreciable decrease in injuries, the league will probably look at punts and possibly consider doing the same thing with punts. It's inevitable. I don't think there are. I haven't seen the numbers. I don't think there are as many injuries on punts, but the league almost sometimes it's like any injury is a bad thing. Except for a muscle pull because you were running or something. And again, and as you said, football is inherently a physical sport. Always has been. It's a little bit. It's a lot disappointing in some ways that we've taken some of the physicality out of it. And you've heard me say before that at the same time that they're doing that, I kind of call them hypocrites because at the same time they're doing that, they're also making it more difficult to play defense. And you've got these guys just running full speed through the secondary, and at some point, somebody is going to just get turned around and run into someone and get seriously injured. And it won't be a violation. It won't be a targeting or something. It'll just be a collision. And leagues like the league wants to do away with that completely. To me, if you're playing, you know it's part of the deal. It's part of the risk. It doesn't make it any less tragic when something happens. But I don't like how I went off on a rant. Obviously.
That's what this is us going off our rants.
Good point. Yeah, I don't like the rule. I as I sat there and kind of talked through it a little bit on the surface, it's not as bad because I was thinking that it would apply to punts as well. And then the only way you would get a punt is to kick it out of bounds inside the that's the only way you get it to do what you wanted it to do. So, not as bad as I was initially thinking, but it's the NFL. They'll screw it up.
And that's great for us who are hitching our wagon to the NFL. It's good for us. But, yeah, I mean...
we should consider covering cricket.
I don't know how the... I have to look into how the management structure of Kick-It is. Kick-It. What is Kick-It? Cricket is...
It's a new game.
I have an uncle from England, and he'd teach me some cricket. I don't know if I want to learn, but if I did, we could have him on, and he would be happy to talk for quite a while. Speaking of punts, the Jets have brought in punter.
Areza.
Yeah, Areza, the punt
Saw
god,
that, yeah.
for a workout, which obviously he had the allegations, very, 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 very serious allegations, a year ago, right? It was about a year ago. That he was a part of a gang rape of a minor, which obviously, if that was true, he should never play professional sports again.
Yeah.
And evidence has come out from the person's friends that he's absolved of at least most of the horrendous guilt, that he wasn't aware, he wasn't involved in the bad part of it. So now that has come out, oops, as I bumped my microphone, now that that's come out, very happy to see him getting a chance to hopefully get his career back on track. Obviously a pretty unfortunate situation for him. And it's a hard one because obviously you want to view someone as innocent or proven guilty, but when accusations of that magnitude are presented, I can't say it was the wrong decision to be like, let's put you on the back burner for now until we get more information here.
Well, and this might be something like the league. Maybe the league needs to. I don't know the ins and outs of the contracts and all of those things with it. I mean, they just cut him. He was on the Bills, right?
Yeah, he was on the Bills.
They just cut him. I agree, and it really was. It sounded awful, and you want to react to that. I wish that they would have. And I mean, what to me? What's the problem with the Buffalo Bills? And hey, there's always a rush to judgment. You can't stop it. People do that all the time. I wish the Buffalo Bills had been like, he is on leave, and if these allegations are proven true, he will be released. We will not have someone like that on our team. However, innocent until proven guilty. We're going to wait till the facts come out. till the trial or whatever. I wish they would do that. I don't understand. I do understand. I don't like if that doesn't seem to be an option, whether it's court of public opinion or what, uh, and for someone who has so little faith in humanity, I'm sitting here asking humanity to be better with that. But I mean, I get it. I'm not mad at Buffalo because it really was a real heinous allegation, and you don't want any part of something like that. You don't want a person like that in your building. But for it to come around that he wasn't even there when it happened, um, no, you wish it had been done differently, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you wish for everyone involved that it had gone differently, and we're obviously going down a rabbit hole, but there's an element of for him is he put himself in a situation, a
Yes.
compromising situation,
Yes.
and while he doesn't carry the guilt that we thought he did at one point, or it looked like he did at one point, he still put himself in that compromising situation. And as a pro athlete, and we talk most about football, but just branching over to basketball with John Morant and his Instagram stuff with his swinging a gun around or whatever.
Yeah.
When you're a professional athlete, you are in a different standard of conduct. And
and you can complain about it if you want, but life is not fair. That's why you're getting the big bucks, dude.
yeah, that's why you're making millions and millions of dollars. you know, and you should, and it's challenging because a lot of these guys are young. Yeah, they're college kids, but yeah, it's something that other athletes, young athletes, should look at these guys. Look at John Morant. Look at Matt as I can't say his last name. Look at that punter, and
Right. Yeah.
and take the lesson that even guilty or not guilty, don't put yourself in a compromising position that could affect your career. John Morant is an incredibly talented basketball player, and that is why he still has a job. If he was not that, he would probably have gotten cut because teams don't like distraction. They don't like noise. It's stupid. Like, go out and you're on Instagram, you're swinging a gun around. Instagram's like, okay, well, legal or not, that's not the issue.
Right.
That's stupid. And we get a whole.
I don't flash any guns that I have. Although all of my registered weapons were tragically lost in a boating accident. Whoever's listening, but you're not going to see me flash them on social media.
Yeah, and like a lot of people point out, it sets a bad example. But if you're a young athlete listening to the show, which you definitely aren't, because this is not geared toward young audience at all. But if you are somehow listening to the show, don't put yourself in those compromising situations. Don't put yourself in a position to have doubt thrown upon you, because for Matt, it could have gone very poorly. We've seen in the past situations where someone could have been innocent, and if the person's friends hadn't come forward with the information that wasn't there, I mean, he should be looking very, very differently. I don't want to get way too much into that because obviously it's a heavy topic, but we're talking about punting. I wanted to bring up Matt because it is a current event.
It's newsworthy.
It's newsworthy, and it's an important conversation to have about athletes, and don't put yourself in that position to compromise. And speaking of young athletes, as this all comes perfectly full circle, we had talked a little bit before we started about talking a little bit about the draft, and not a whole deep dive into it because there's a lot of picks, and
and it's been done.
It's
honestly.
been done by a lot of people, but just some names that we are keeping an eye out for? Even just a name that we just like, I want to see how this guy's career goes. What was the guys that you had in mind?
Well, the first one, I'm not trying to be too clever here and come up with something that nobody's thought of. I'm going to be watching B. John Robinson. I've been watching him in college. He's been incredible. I think he's got a chance to have an even better pro career, if that's possible. And so I'll be watching him. Um, there's the obvious ones. Anthony Richardson, I think, is going to be interesting. He's landed in an interesting spot. At that same token, you could say Will Levis, but I'm less intrigued by him than Anthony Richardson. Be someone I'll be watching. I love that Joey Porter Jr. is in Pittsburgh, playing where his dad played. I just think that's fantastic. I'm going to be watching some of that. And then there's another guy, Roshan Johnson, was drafted by the Bears in the 4th round at running back. He wasn't even a starter in college because he was playing behind B. John Robinson. I love those stories. I think that could be really fun if that guy proves to be, even if he's just a platoon type back. I mean, most teams now are doing running back by committee anyway. So yeah, that's somebody I'm going to be watching, just out of curiosity to see what happens with him. There's a few others. Tyler Scott, Peter Skoronsky, just because he's got an excellent lineman name. Oh, and the last one, Luke Musgrave, drafted by the Packers, tight end, played for Oregon State. Did not play very much the last year because he had a torn MCL. But I know the Musgrave family a little bit, and I'm curious to see how that turns out. So yeah, those are the rookies I'm going to be watching most this year.
You know the Musgrave family. So you're telling me when he's a huge star, you're going to get him on our show.
I don't know him that well.
You need to start working on your connections.
I really do. Well, I need to get back into coaching if I'm going to, even if it's just so I can go to the conventions. That's where I met most of these guys. Going to the coaching clinics and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I know. I'm sure you've had a lot of different names you've come across.
Yeah.
One guy for me, you mentioned Anthony Richardson. I'm really interested to see him, especially working with Shane Steichen, who did a great job with Jalen Hurts. He did a great job with Justin Herbert. I'm very, very interested to see how he does with him in Indianapolis. He's just an incredible talent. Of course, the top guys, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, but Richardson is just a unique talent. There's so much potential there. The other name for me that I want to see, and this is selfishly as a Bronco fan, but Drew Sanders was very interesting to me. Interesting player and a guy I'm going to be keeping close eye on, especially as a linebacker. It'll be interesting to see how he's used with Peyton's under Sean Payton, under Vance Joseph. He's had, when he was in Denver before, he had Von Miller on the outside. Drew Sanders tends to play more of an inside role, but it's going to be interesting to see how they use him because he's kind of a smaller dude. And the other name, another Bronco guy, but is Riley Moss, simply for the fact that he's a white cornerback. And when do you ever get to see that?
Not since Jason Sehorn.
Who also played for Sean Payton.
Yeah.
So all comes full circle. Sean Payton loves his white cornerbacks. I'm sure someone will take offense to that, but yeah, those.
Hey, he likes people that play. I'll tell you what. I mean, good for the Broncos that they got Sean Payton, but I'm disappointed he's not going to be on Colin Cowherd's show anymore because I loved the segment with him. It was so good. Once a week, he'd come in and they'd talk football, and it was just, oh,
Yeah,
it was
I
so
mean,
good.
it's nice. I love when hearing those smart dudes talk,
Yeah.
and getting to hear them talk on a show is just so much fun. And like, I love hearing Bill Belichick when he actually gets talking about football. It's
Mhm.
so much fun to listen to him talk. Same thing with other guys. Well, what's his name? But he's on McAfee,
Oh,
Colts coach.
yeah.
Yeah, he's. They always just call him, segment with coach. So, but just hearing these guys and their different perspectives, guys who've been in the NFL and successful in the NFL, it's always fun to hear their perspectives on things. I mean, I loved watching the Manning cast this season. I loved
Yeah.
it last season. I love it because you get to watch, and because you're not watching a commentator, you're watching someone who's actually looking at the game. And that's something that always
Yeah.
bugs me with commentators, because commentators are supposed to be professional. And, I mean, that's their job, is to be professional and look for the good, and they can't be Peyton Manning going, come on, you missed the read. And you can see he's, when a quarterback's playing poorly and Manning's watching, he's visibly upset
Yes.
and annoyed. And it's awesome. I love it because that's.
You know what I hope? I hope they bring Brady on and have the three of them.
I hope.
That'll be a show.
I want to see Brady.
Brady will cuss them out.
I want to see Brady absolutely eviscerate some poor smuck who has to come in and just pick him apart. I want to see that. I can't root for Brady even more so because Brady's now a co-owner of the Oakland Raiders. Oh my goodness, Las Vegas Raiders. So I hate him even more.
Off the tongue.
I hate him even more.
Right. That's right. I saw that and I went, oh, and then just completely glossed over it.
I hate it. I hate him. I hate it so
know,
much.
You know what? I was thinking about this. When I talk about Sean Payton. Because Coward would ask him, before some of this stuff came up, he was like, your name always comes up, and Peyton was like, yeah, I'm having a good time and all that stuff. And you see these guys away from the sport, all of them away from the sport. It's killing me. I can't think of the guy, the Indianapolis coach that was on McAfee's show, dude. But you see all of these guys and the players, the Mannings. Some of the things with Tom Brady lately, they're done, right? They're away from the sport, and they've got a smile on their face, ear to ear. They're relaxed. They're having a good time. Life is good, and they still can't stay away from the game.
Yep.
They still can't stay away from the game. And obviously, all I ever did was high school football, but I get it. You've heard me say I feel the itch sometimes. I want to coach again, and then I think, no, I don't. What the heck am I? No, I don't want to do that. I'm too old for that. And then every time I drive past the football field, I get that same old feeling. And these guys, I mean, can you imagine them? Can you imagine any of them? Imagine being a coach. And I know how it felt as a coach. First time I come walking out of a big school tunnel onto the field, it was like, hey, yeah, baby. It was pretty awesome. As a player, it was pretty awesome. Can you imagine being in the NFL or even college? I get why these guys can't give it up.
Yeah, there's an addiction to it, and it's a very, very different life to be just a commentator, and it's a life that I hope to do here.
Yeah.
but the lack of control and not being able to, I've obviously never been an NFL coach. Spoiler alert, shocker to everyone here. I've never coached an NFL team, but the amount of work that they put in, I mean, everyone's workaholic. But the amount of work and time they put in, it's just not the same as the time they put in on a TV show. And
No.
it's a little bit like a drug. It's just there's not a way to replace it because it's an unhealthy obsession. To be a coach, you have to have an unhealthy obsession with the sport.
Yeah.
And to be on, you be a commentator on ESPN or whatever, you don't. I.e., Joe Buck. He needs a little bit more obsession, passion.
Right.
But it's just different. And some guys translate well to it, and some guys don't. Some guys come to life when you put them behind the desk and they start talking, and then you can't imagine them as a player. I mean, like Chris Collinsworth, he's not a player. He's just a commentator. You know, I mean, it's like it doesn't.
Right.
He embodied it way more than some other guys some other guys are on there and you're like, it still doesn't feel like Tony Gonzalez. It doesn't feel. It's weird that he's a commentator still.
He's not bad, but yeah, it's not as interesting to me.
It's not even that if he's bad or not. It's just it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. You know who's good? Mark Sanchez.
He is, and I think the reason is because there is he's rarely at butt level, and when he's at butt level, he tends to have issues.
Yeah.
Historically, at least, he has struggled.
He's another one. I never miss when he's on Coward's show.
Yeah, Sanchez is good.
I never listened to Nick Wright. I never listened to Rob Parker. I never listened to I don't think Kellerman's never been on Fox, I don't think. So yeah, some of those guys, some guys that Coward has on, I don't listen to them because they're stupid. But Sanchez, Platt, sadly, on Peyton when he was.
I usually listen to who's the guy you were talking about? Coward. I usually listen to Coward when he has people on that are smarter than him, which is pretty often.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
One question I wanted to I wanted to bring up to you. Oh, actually, it's the perfect time to bring into our segment. We have a segment, believe it or not. We have some form of thought process that went into this besides monkey see record button, monkey do record button. Our segment is curveballs. And how apropos that we have a baseball segment. Hanging curveballs. Yes. A baseball segment in a football show. If you have a better name for it, you can let us know. But it seems apropos that we have something out of left field here.
Well, I mean, I am going to do some baseball stuff on my Coach's Corner stuff as well, and it'll probably bleed into this. So it's not completely out of left field.
Puns completely.
Another baseball reference.
I don't mean to steal your thunder here, but
no. So yes, you have a curveball. You're going to throw me a curveball.
Curveball. Yes, I'd like you. And
we should make it clear, by the way, that for the listeners that he doesn't know what I'm going to ask him, and I don't know what he's going to ask me. That's why we're calling it a curveball.
My curveball is kind of like a Zach Greinke curveball, where I kind of held up my fingers and told you what the pitch was before, because I did mention this to you a couple days ago, but you didn't know I was going to bring it up. So it's still a curveball, but it's a Zach Greinke curveball.
All right.
Side note, the fact that he tells the guys their pitches and most of the time still gets the strikes, I love it. It cracks me up, and it's wonderful. I'd like you to tell me when there was five main quarterbacks taken in the draft. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Hendon Hooker, and Bennett, who I'm forgetting his first name.
Bennett.
For Alabama. Not Alabama, for Georgia. What's his first name?
Oh, Stetson Bennett.
Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
I'd like you I want to know.
Oh, Anthony Richardson in
Anthony
that?
Richardson, 6. And you don't have to put too much thought into it, but when are they going to get their first start? And yeah, we'll start with that. When are they going to get their first start?
Okay. Well, I would say both Young and Stroud are going to get their first start on day one.
Safe assumption.
Richardson possibly as well. Who else do they have?
I mean, with C.J. Stroud,
right
you should be careful with C.J. Stroud. I mean, according to Davis Mills on Twitter, he's in a QB competition.
I know. I understand that Davis Mills is competing. He should. But yeah.
Let me look up what the other Colts quarterback is. Go look at the Indianapolis Colts. Let's take a look at quarterback. Q. Don't have another quarterback, so
Alrighty then.
I think it's a safe assumption that
they'll bring in some veteran to carry the clipboard and talk to the guy.
Oh no, they have a quarterback. They have a quarterback. Sam Ellinger. Oh, they have Sam Ellinger and Gardner Minshew. Those are the other guys.
Okay. I mean, I could see Minshew starting there. But enough so that I'm not going to say he's a lock A1 guy. But I mean, I do think if he has a good camp and has a good preseason, why wouldn't you at that point? Why wouldn't you be like, all right, we're going to roll with this guy. We're going to, think we can do it. Yeah.
So you have him at day one, even though you think there's a chance that Minshew might start?
I do. If you hold me down and make me make a decision, I say he's going to be a day one starter. But that is the one that of the three, that is the one that I'm least confident in.
Moving on to the least or the less sure ones, Will Levis. Now, I think we both probably agree he doesn't start week 1, barring injury. Do you think he starts this season? If not, when does he get a start?
Tannehill's still there, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think their ideal. They drafted Malik Willis last season late, and he got a couple of. Tannehill got hurt. He got a couple games. They know what they've got with him. So I think their ideal is for Tannehill to play out. I believe this is the last year of his contract. And so probably what they're hoping is that they play well enough to be playoff contender and Tannehill goes all season. They probably at the same time are thinking how great it would be if somebody as a quarterback go down and they can leverage Tannehill for a high draft pick and play Levis season. But that entirely depends on how he looks in camp and preseason. So I expect Tannehill to go all season as the starter and for Levis be kind of the Jordan Love plan and not start right away.
All right, so we got 3 day one starters and a next season starter. Then we got the 2 wild cards, Hendon Hooker and Stetson Bennett. Obviously, both those guys have a player ahead of them with Matthew Stafford for Bennett and Jared Goff for Hooker. But Stafford struggled with injuries, and do you think Goff is going to repeat his success from last season.
I do think Goff can can repeat his success. Also, Hooker's coming off of a knee injury. I don't know all the details on that. I don't know if he's actually going to be cleared day one or not. If he is, well, good. But I think Stafford can play out. I think he can play as well again. The truth of the matter is, if this goes back to I mentioned it earlier, I think Stafford has. He dipped. He successful, and then kind of fell off. And I think some people think that's the. I'm sorry, not Stafford.
Goff.
Off. Yeah. You can understand the confusion. They both played for the same teams. So he kind of dipped, and I think people think that's what Goff is. I'm betting that Goff is the better version that we've seen often, and can continue to play. Even at his best, he wasn't. He had that one incredible game with the Chiefs where they threw for 1,000,000 yards, and nobody could play defense on that. On that game or whatever. But that wasn't the regular with Goff. It was just solid play, and they had a pretty good team around him and made it to the Super Bowl. So I think that's the case with Hooker. Also, I saw some scouts say that Hooker was a lot of single read stuff in college, and they don't think it's going to translate as well.
All right. Sorry about that. We had a jump cut there for a second because I had to go run and check on my son, who had a open phone in his hand and hopefully wasn't calling the Nigerian hacker. We were talking about Hendon Hooker. Take it away.
You don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent about Hendon Hooker. I think that off will be. So the interesting thing going to be, first of all, I don't know how healthy Hooker is because he's coming off the knee.
It looks like he's out for at least the beginning of the season.
Okay. Well, that tells you one thing right there. So here's the thing. So by that token, as long as he's playing as well as last season or close to it, I don't think they move off of Goff this season at all. It's the thing that I could see happening with them. I'm going a little bit above and beyond your question. So imagine Detroit takes another step, has another good season. And they start asking the question, what do we need to get over the hump? Is it the quarterback that gets us over the hump? They've got you might have a potential quarterback controversy going into next season. Don't know what Goff's contract situation is. I would guess he doesn't have too much left on it because we wouldn't have drafted Hooker. They got him late because of the injury, but still, I don't know. That's an interesting move. I like Hendon Hooker. I'd like to see him do well. So would be interesting to see him this shot, but I don't think he's going to get one this season.
Goff is going to is under contract for the next 2 seasons, though next season they can save $21 million by cutting him.
See, yeah, I think for them it's probably similar. Well, not for injury reasons because Levis is not injured, but it's probably a similar situation for them. Hope he does well enough that Hooker doesn't have to play and can. If he can at all, if he's cleared to play, and then they'll make a decision next year.
The final one I'll pin you down on, Stetson Bennett.
Stetson Bennett. So, you said it yourself. Goff has been, or no, Goff,
Stafford, the other one.
Stafford, another Detroit quarterback, um, has been. I still think of him as Detroit, even though he's been in LA for 2 years now. So he's been injured. He's not getting any younger. Um, I think he might have regressed a little bit last season as well, besides the injuries. It's hard to say because he was hurt. So weirdly, don't think it'll happen because, like I said, I think Stroud and Young are day one guys. Um, but it would be. It is only an injury away from being a day one starter, right? I mean, I don't know how he's going to be. He played. He's a winner. Got guts. Is he a pro quarterback? I don't know. I don't think. I think some people don't know. Um, so we'll see. But
I'll pin you down on it. Does he play this? Does he start this season for the Rams?
I think he will start he'll start because of injury at some point. I think he will.
All right, we'll keep you to it, and we'll see. We'll see how well that ages.
Yeah.
Hopefully it ages great, just like cheese.
You like cheese?
I believe, have a curveball question for me.
Yeah, not as in depth as yours.
Mine was a little bit in depth.
That's okay. I like it. I but I think it has meat. So I'm sure you've heard we mentioned his show, Pat McAfee's show. I'm sure you've heard he's going big time on to ESPN. Think that's going to be good for his show, or is ESPN a sinking ship and they're desperately hoping that Pat McAfee is the life raft and they're just going to drag him down with them?
Well,
I betrayed my thoughts, didn't I?
You love ESPN. I can just hear it in the way you phrase it.
I really, really love it.
There's two ways you look at this. I will look at it from the ESPN side of things first. If ESPN is trying to reinvent themselves, the ESPN of old, the ESPN that was good, was great at being at the forefront of change in the industry. They were the first ones to put on the field first down marker, right? For example. That was one thing they did good, was initiating change. If this is them getting back to their roots, that's good. But like you said, if it's a desperate grasp, then it's not. I don't really know which one it is for ESPN's side of things. I think that this will have to be the first step of many if they're going to change or fix what has been broken. But I think it's a good step for them. For McAfee's side of things, I get why he's doing it. I get why you'd want. There's an appeal to being able to just walk into the studio and start, not having to do the background stuff, not having to do the mic checks, not having to whatever. You just walk into a studio and start. That being said, what it sounds like is that he's losing the ability to stream on his channel. And one thing, and I'm going to kind of plagiarize some thoughts I've heard, because I thought they were said well and agreed. Tom Grossi said when talking about it, he mentioned a great point. He brought up that a lot of people who are watching McAfee are watching McAfee because they don't want to watch ESPN. And now they have to go back to ESPN. And the thing that is different about this is that when you're on YouTube, you're creating a community. But when you're on ESPN, you're getting an audience, and there's a difference. And
Yeah.
losing the community is something that cannot be overstated. I don't like this idea that you have to get to a major network to be successful. He's being on YouTube. I mean, he had a great deal with FanDuel. I mean, being on YouTube, he was succeeding. He didn't need ESPN to take that next step. In my opinion, I think he was building something that was unique and special without ESPN. And I think it's not really ESPN that's the issue. It's the fact that ESPN is run by Disney. That's the issue. And McAfee's show has been built on this open communication. They're going to talk about COVID. They're going to talk about some conspiracy theories about COVID. They're going to talk about ayahuasca with Aaron Rodgers. They're going to talk about whatever. And the question is, will that carry over with a Disney-run corporation? Or are they going to do the same thing they did with saying the F word and be like, we've decided that out of respect, we're not going to say it. And now, personally, I don't care if they cuss. I personally don't mind not hearing them cuss as much as they do. So I'm not bothered by that change in that regard. But if you watch this video, he says, we're not changing, it's the same show. And then immediately says we're changing this. And it's a small thing. But the question is it a change made because it feels like the right thing to do since we're now on daytime television? Or is it a change that was forced upon them? And if it's a change that was forced upon them, is that the first change of many? And I think that right there determines whether this will be the beginning of growth or the beginning of the end.
Right. I'm with you. I think obviously I think it's a mistake, and I'm not a big fan of Disney, aka ESPN, whatever. But I don't remember who. Maybe it was. I think I was watching Megyn Kelly recently, and she was talking about she had a guest on there that used to be on Fox News quite a bit. They were talking about Tucker Carlson and all of that stuff, and maybe they're saying it because that's their situation, but they were talking about how much better it was to not be tied to a network, and how much more freedom they had, and so I don't know. I think that's a big deal. I think your freedom, your brand is important, and I don't think they're going to be able to sustain it under the Disney umbrella. So
yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with everything you said. Obviously, I hope that we're wrong. I hope that it works out for them. I wish them the best, and I'm not rooting for them to not succeed. I want to see them. I want to see it work. I want to see Disney put out good content because I like Star Wars.
right.
I want to see good Star Wars content. I want to see ESPN
get their crap together. Yeah.
I want to see ESPN get back to what they used to be. Because ESPN used to be so good. And so, yeah, I'm rooting for them, but I don't have high hopes for it in the same way.
Right.
Well,
yeah, it's. Yeah.
Oh, what were you going to say?
I was just going to pile on, basically, which I don't need to do.
Speaking of piling on, we are past an hour on our first show. I know we have a soft idea of going for about an hour, but give or take an hour. an hour, give or take an hour. But you have been watching. You haven't been watching. I mean, if you're on YouTube, you've been watching. You've been watching a beautiful cinematic, purple cinematic. Eventually, maybe we'll have our beautiful faces, or not so beautiful faces, depending on your opinion. But until then, you'll be listening to it either on YouTube or anywhere else you might be listening to a podcast. You've been listening to Insomniac Sports. This is the first episode. We will have more episodes of us rambling, talking, communicating.
Probably get better.
I mean, I hope
Probably
we
get better. Yeah.
Stick
No.
with. You come for the mediocre content and you stay for the community environment
There we go.
that we hope
Yeah.
you create by staying. And this is the longest
Do it for
outro.
the kids.
Do it for the kids. Just think of the kids. Think of my kid. I mean, how is he going to brag to kids at school if you don't like and subscribe to the channel? With that being said, I don't know what else I can say. I don't know how else I can end it.
I think that sums it up nicely.
I think that's about perfect. This has been Insomniac Sports. I hope you have a very good one, and I'll see you next time.
Good night, folks.